Hi YouTube, welcome back. This is part one of two videos in which I will be rebuilding the cylinder heads. They are pretty much finished now. I'm just waiting on a few bits and bobs to completely complete them. I'll show you the finished product at the end of the next video. I'm splitting it into two parts because the video of this entire project, which is a hell of a lot of work to get these heads rebuilt, especially to the aesthetic standard that I'm reaching for. The video is already well over an hour, so I figured as I'm waiting on parts anyway, I'll get half the project out now, wait for the parts to arrive, and then I'll release another video with the finished article, probably later this week. The time has come to start doing some rebuilding. Starting with the A-bank head, we can put the valves back in. Before I do that though, there's just a couple of things I want to check on this head, which I should have done before I committed to painting and using these heads. But I'm learning as I go, so we're just going to do it in this order. First thing I should check is that the head's not warped like a banana. And the second thing I should check is there's no low spots on the gasket mating surface. The warpage is a bit of a concern because I don't know what I'm doing and I didn't read the instruction book. The big green book of bollocks actually does tell you when you're taking the heads off, you should undo the head nuts in a circular motion, working from the middle outwards, so that you're relieving the pressure on the head in an even distribution of torque down force-ness. Yeah, this science and stuff, but basically what I may have done is taken all the nuts off this end, and by the time I got to this end, forces were pressing up on the aluminium head and bending it like a banana. We're talking about microscopic amounts of warpage here. I think we're talking in the sort of 1 to 2 thousandths of an inch, but we need to check, because if it's anything more than I think 2 thousandths of an inch warped, then it needs sending to a machine shop, and that comes with its own whole list of problems, because you can't just machine the top of these heads, you need to machine the bottom. That's the top, that's the bottom. You need to do the top and the bottom. Let's just hope it's not warped. That would be nice. The other reason I wanted to check is for low spots, is because I've cleaned all the gasket surface off. As you can see, there's still the odd little bit. I didn't go too crazy, and if I did go too crazy in one area by accident, there's a chance I've taken a little bit of material off, and that would be bad if it was over. I think again you can get away with 2 to 4 thousandths of an inch. Could be talking bollocks there, maybe it's just 2. I guess it depends what gasket you use and all sorts. So I'm going to check this head. I'm not going to get into cleaning the gasket surface. I'm not going to tell you how I did mine. I'm just not wading into that conversation. There's a lot of information out there and on the internet. A lot of it's conflicting, a lot of it's bad, a lot of it's good, probably. I'm just not getting into that debate. If you want to clean your gasket surface, you do your own research. It's clean enough. Let's see if I've wrecked it. To do warpage and low spot checks, you will need one of these, which is a straight edge. This isn't just a piece of metal. This is a specifically machined piece of metal that is machined to very fine tolerances and is, for all intents and purposes, perfectly straight. Therefore, any deviation from the bottom edge of this straight edge on this head would indicate that there's an issue with the head, not with the straight edge. To do said measurement, you need a set of feeler gauges. I've gone for, I don't know if you can see that, 2 thousandths of an inch or 0.05 millimeters. And all I'm going to do now is run along and hopefully hear that noise all the way along. That's indicating that the 0.002 of an inch measurement, what are these called? It's like shim material, won't go between the straight edge and my cylinder head surface. Therefore, hopefully indicating that it is perfectly flat all the way along, and also I've not found any low spots doing that. So once you've done that way, you need to place it the other way and do the same. I have seen people just putting gentle pressure on the straight edge. I assume that's allowed. I've seen people who look professional doing it, so I'm going to do it. Good, that's all lovely. Then apparently you can do straight across along the edge, the middle and the other edge, and then various points along the what's that, horizontal? Yeah, horizontal. That's the other one. The word evades me, so we'll just go along like this. I think one point you can quite often get low points is in between the firing rings, apparently, so not seeing any issues there. I'm not going to film anymore, but I'll just do this edge and then I'll do the horizontals. I'm 99% happy that this head is going to seal to the head gasket without any issues, hopefully. So that's that. Let's move on to the valve seats. So for those of you that have watched the disassembly video, you'll be aware or familiar with all these parts. I'm going to start, I'm on a bank, I'm going to start A1, and the first valve is an exhaust. So there's A1 exhaust valve. You've got your inner and your outer spring, a little cup that the spring sits in, the retainer type thing at the top, the two keepers that hold the valve stem in place, and then once we put the cam, once we come to do the cam, we'll be putting these, is it tappet things on the top, and these are the shims that set the valve clearances. So you can see currently this one has a 32, I don't know what that measurement is it 32ths of an inch? I don't know, I need to look up that, but it's a 32, and we'll have to take some, we'll put it in, set it all up, and then see if it's correct, and if it's not, then we'll need to go either thicker or thinner with that shim to set the valve clearances correctly. But before we can put all that crap back on, we need to lap the valves, which is all new to me, so forgive me if I don't explain this very well, but basically we need to clean up this valve surface and mate it to the valve seat surface. We just zoom in. That's not enough. Let's zoom in a bit more. Yeah, there's your valve seat, and you can see it's a little bit, these are in really good condition, but it's just a little bit worn and pitted, and also the valve itself again is a little bit worn and pitted. So all we're going to do is mate them together so that when that's being held, when that's being held that way, this is up because it's upside down, but basically when it's being held down with the force of the springs, it should form a very tight seal against the valve seat. And we can test that a little bit after we've completed everything and rebuilt the head. We'll get to that later. To lap the valves, you pop some paste on, obviously clean everything first, which I'll do in a minute. You then pop some paste on the valve, attach it to a sucker tool. I'm not going to do that at the minute because I don't want to get oil and crap all over my sucker tool, because they're not great at holding the valve as it is. You then pop the valve back in with some lube on the stem, obviously, and everything's clean. And using your sucker tool, you grind the paste until you get the desired result. This is a very short version of what's about to happen. So first stage in the process is to clean this valve up. Now, this is another minefield, a bit like gasket cleaning surface, where I've seen some good advice. I've sought some advice from my mechanic friends, and I've seen some hilariously bad advice. I'm not here to tell you what to do. The only thing I will say is I have seen some people polishing these to a mirror finish, popping them on a drill and using sandpaper all over it to get them all lovely and shiny. Now, I love shiny things, as I'm sure viewers are aware, but that's bad, is the bottom line there. They don't want to be like that. This is a protective heat-proof coating. We don't want to really affect that too much. I am going to have to just clean it slightly to get rid of the carbon, but I'm going to try and leave as much of it as possible. I don't want to touch the stem at all. I am going to use a drill to spin it, but I'm going to use the, what's that called? A bench drill, and I'm going to protect that very well so that there's no chance of any damage of a chuck holding onto there. And also the bottom as well. I'm just going to very lightly take off that layer of carbon. So let's do that. What I've come up with for protecting the stem is some vacuum or whatever tubing it is. It's a nice tight fit. You can't see, but I'm just squeezing this on. So that's now completely protected. I'm not going to go anywhere near where it sits in the valve guide with any abrasives. But we'll just pop it in the drill like so. And I'm only going to nip this up by hand as well. I could do it with the chuck, it wouldn't do it any harm because it's got that protective tube around it, but that's more than enough. I'll just wait for the ice cream van to shut up. No, it's still going. Are you done? He's done. Right. I've just put gloves on, which will distress some people. While this is spinning, there's a chance that your glove can get caught, and apparently you can get what's called degloved, where basically the glove gets wrapped around there and it'll rip off and could injure me. However, I've done a lot of testing with all this. I started off not using gloves, but I'm using WD-40 and my hands were just getting covered with it, which is equally not good. And I did do quite a lot of testing to see if I could actually get it to rip a glove off, and I couldn't. So basically I'm not going to worry about it, but apparently you're supposed to not wear gloves for the risk of it catching and ripping your hand off. Just thought I'd mention that. I'm using some Scotch-Brite just to clean these off. This is another controversial product because it contains fine grains of, is it aluminium oxide? And obviously for an engine that's terrible. However, I am being stupidly careful to clean everything. I will also be cleaning out the head again after we've finished because I want to get rid of any chance of any residue of the Scotch-Brite and also any grinding paste. So we'll get to that later. If you're worried about me using Scotch-Brite because of the residue, don't. If you're worried for some other reason, then feel free to put in the comments. I know Scotch-Brite has a bad name for various things, but this is what I've found seems to work. Just running it very gently on this top side. I'm just going up to that black edge. I'm not going up the stem, just to take the edge of carbon off there. I don't really want to see any difference in colour or anything. I just want to take the top edge off. That will do. I'm now going to move on to the bottom. Until I can't feel any roughness. Let's just see how that's getting on. Oh, I need a cloth. That's looking fine. That's what I wanted, to leave some of this black material, but just take the edge off it. And if we look underneath, again, I think we're there with that. That's all I want. I'm not going crazy cleaning these up. I just want to take the edge off. So let's just pop it out and just have a quick proper look. Yeah, that's absolutely fine. It's just taking off that layer of crispiness that was there. Whoops. So now I've got to fight and pull the tube off. which is going to be incredibly difficult because I've got lube on my hands. Let's just use a cloth. There we go. Okay, got some brake cleaner here. And get rid of any of the Scotch-Brite. That can sit there. While we're doing this, I'm just going to pop all the bits into soak, including the tappet and shim, which we won't be fitting now. They can go over there. Got some more brake cleaner here. I am going to open the door and put the fans on in a minute, by the way, but just for now, I'm going to get in there with some brake cleaner, make sure everything's laboratory level clean. I'm going to stick my finger over the valve stem guide, make sure there's nothing down there. That'll do. Right, now, because that's had brake cleaner on it, this should suck onto here as well as it's going to. They're not great, to be honest. They like to pop off mid-grind, but it is what it is. I need a little bit of oil. There we go. So we're just going to put a bit of oil on the stem. Just spurted oil all over the vise there. Well done. Don't need too much. Just so that it's not going into the valve. See, it's fallen off already. Let the fun begin. Not going into the valve guide. Just completely dry. And then, this is going to be another minefield of the internet. People who do this all the time are going to have some favourite products. They're going to say, I only use this grade. I don't use 2 grades. I've just bought a kit. I'm a beginner. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't have years of experience. So all I can do is go to the shop and buy what's given. And what was given was coarse and fine. And I've done a test and it seems to work. So this is what I've been doing. It may be wrong. It may not be what some old timer's been doing for 10, 20, 30 more years. But it is what it is. So I've just got a little palette knife thing and pop in a generous amount of the coarse paste around the cock. Not doing very well. Actually, I wonder if this needs a clean. Maybe this has got a bit greasy. Let's just give that a little dab of brake cleaner. See if that helps. Maybe that did actually. Right, now that can slip in. Okay, and here's where years of experience is going to help, and I don't have it. But the basic idea is to grind now. You should be able to hear at first that it's really gritty. It's an awful sound. It's like metal filings on metal. It's a sound you wouldn't ever want to associate with an engine, but for this, it's what we want to hear. And then you'll hear it change as the grit particles grind down and become smaller and smaller. I'm going to grind it like I'm lighting a fire, and I'm going to lift the valve out occasionally and replace it just to distribute the grinding compound around the seat again. So here goes. So here's the sound when you first start. Awful, as you can hear. That's popping off again. So you can hear it's already changing. And now it's just a case of grinding it in, letting the metal and metal surfaces basically find a nice mating surface, I guess. So I'll pull that out and just see how we're getting on. What I'm hoping to say, I didn't want to use cloths for this. I keep going through a million cloths and I've got these cheap wipes. But yeah, what I'm looking for, I think, again, this is the first time I've ever done this, apart from a couple of practice runs, but I'm looking to, just zoom in, I'm looking to remove as much of these little speckles as possible, because they're low spots, and I basically want to grind them out. What I don't want to do is end up over grinding though. Apparently you can over grind. especially if you use a drill, which I might mention later, but I'm not going to use a drill. I'm just going to use the hand method. And if you overgrind, you might end up grinding down right to the edge like this. So instead of having a kind of a lip and then a straight bit, you just grind the whole thing down. Apparently that's bad. You're looking for a dull grey. I've just wiped the stem there with the gritty cloth, which is a stupid idea. So now I'm going to have to make sure I clean the stem completely, because I do not want grinding paste off the cloth going on the stem and then going down the guide. That would be bad. So I'm looking for an even grey, slightly dull edge or ring along there, and the same on the seat. So we're getting there. I think I'm going to switch now to the fine grade. Let me just make sure I clean that valve stem off completely though. Right, so we'll move the coarse paste out of the way and move on to the fine grade and do another pass with that. It's way too much on my knife there. You probably shouldn't use a knife as well. You should probably use some specific paste adding tool. I should probably put a bit of oil back on that. Probably still a bit down in the guide, but won't hurt. So you can hear it more with the fine paste for some reason. There'll be some scientific reason, but when I lift it up, you can hear the particles re-finding a position and then getting ground down. Just do that a couple more times and then we'll give it a check. There's still the odd tiny little black spot there, but that looks much better to me. What I don't want to do is overgrind, and I'm not experienced, so I'm probably stopping a little bit before I would have to. Whoops. But better that than... You can always come back and do this more, even if you've rebuilt the head. I could always take it apart again if someone pointed out that I hadn't done enough. What you can't do is put it back on. So again, looking at the seat now, so this is kind of what it did look like. Oops, zoom in. There we go. A little bit crusty, a little bit tired. And now we've got a nice, even grey seat. Like I said, I will be testing these later. Basically what you do is pop all the valves in. Once they're all fitted with the springs, so they're tight down to the seats, you can pop brake cleaner or water apparently, but I'm going to use brake cleaner because that way it'll evaporate and I'm not worried about there being water still in here later on in there, and just leave it, and basically none of it should leak past your seat. That's the general test, I believe. So we'll be doing that later and see how successful. And if it does leak out, then like I said, we'll have to disassemble the ones that leak and reseat them better. Back in the jar. It can sit there. Right, and now we have one valve and all its bits all clean, ready for refitment. Let's just clean any crap out of there. There's usually quite a bit of crud up in them, I seem to find, after years of service. That's much better. Same with these little cups. They seem to hold all the rubbish. That's not too bad, that one. Just in that crease. Mustn't lose our shim, he says, throwing it down there. In fact, actually, I've just realised putting them on the deck there is a really stupid idea. I'm not going to put the keepers up there because if they fall down inside the head, it's going to be a bit of a nightmare getting them out. Let's get a bag all that up. I don't want to put it back in the grotty old oily bag. And what I'll do is label that A1 exhaust done. And that's ready for refitting. There we go. A1 exhaust done. Pop all the bits in. Where's my WD-40 gone? Or other lubes are available, just to keep everything. Bag always has to get in the way. Just to keep everything nice and moist while it's waiting fitment. So that's that one done. So the next one is an inlet, A1 inlet. There we go. So I'm not going to talk this time. I'm just going to do the same procedure. I'll film this and then I'll do the rest of them in my own time. Oh, one thing with these being intakes, they've got the valve stem seals in the bag. I'm replacing those, so obviously I don't need to worry about that. I forgot to say, actually, with the inlet ones, I found I can't get rid of the carbon off the combustion side without taking them back to a shiny metal. It's just how it is. I'm leaving this black coating on the outside, but I'm having to remove it from the underside. As you can see there, just in the process of trying to clean them up, it just comes off. I've checked with mechanic friends and they've said it is what it is, don't worry about it. They could be wrong, wouldn't be the first time, but it's what I'm doing. So I think that one's about there. Let's have a look. Yep. Still just a little bit there and just a few speckles, so I'm just going to run that again. I got rid of 99% of that. There's still a little bit of a mark there, but I don't think that'll be an issue, so I'm going to move on to the fine grade. Right, it's many hours later and they're all done. I've just covered this up for the night so that no crap gets in there, which, as I'm saying that, I've realised is pretty pointless, because first thing I'm going to do tomorrow is fill up that big long Christmas tree box that I have full of nice hot water and give this a really thorough rinse, clean and dry to make sure I've got rid of absolutely any of the grinding, what's the word, paste? I think that's the word. Before we reassemble the springy bits of the head. There's a word for the valves. That's the one. So yeah, see you tomorrow. I'm going to go to the pub now, I think. It is Saturday night after all. Right, it's the next day. I've got a tank outside full of clean hot water, and I'm just going to put a bit of TFR in it, just a tiny bit, and then give this a proper wash and rinse off. Let's just grab the head, making sure I don't drop it. That would be a tragedy. It's only just deep enough, actually. It'll do. A little bit of TFR. For those of you that don't know what TFR is, it's traffic film remover. It's basically just a very strong detergent. Empty this water out, give it a rinse, and then leave it to dry. This is one of the best things I did in my garden, was fit a hot water feed to my outdoor tap. Not so good for the plants. I've got another tap for that. Great for rinsing stuff off. Makes the car all nice and dry quickly as well. I'm going to leave that with the fan blowing on it and the door open and fresh air and stuff. I'll probably leave that till tomorrow now, just to make sure that it's absolutely dry, all the oil galleries and whatever. Haven't got any water in them, and then we'll move on to the valves. We are into yet another day. This is now dry, so it's time to fit the valves. For that, I will use my precision tooling here. I've been doing some precision modifications, as you can see, to this. This is just a bit of MDF with some washers stuck on it, but it allows me to put all the valves in and then keep them in while I turn it upside down or the right way up, and then run it through the press, using that to compress the springs and put all the little fiddly bits in. If you haven't watched my previous video, you're probably wondering why I'm using a press to put the valves in. Most people use a spring compressor. I've discussed that in a previous video, so yeah, I'm using a press. This is a one exhaust. So I'm going to pop all the valves in. Oh, I need some lube. I'm going to use a bit of engine assembly lube. I'm going to put some gloves on though, because that stuff's very sticky. I've got all the valves. I'm just going to put a little bit of, you can use oil, I believe. I've just got my assembly lube here, so I'm going to use that. Hopefully that's not a bad thing. I'm not going to be starting this engine, stand up. I'm not going to be starting this engine for some time, so I kind of feel where I can use assembly lube is a good idea. That's what I wanted to see anyway. See it sinking down slowly. It means it's got some lube now. When they were dry, they were just dropping in quite quickly. Need to check that valve guide. I might just give that a clean out. Come back to that one in a minute. Right, all the rest of those are fine. Just wipe my hands. Let's just clean that off. Let's just try that again. Beautiful. Okay, hopefully we've sorted that. They're all feeling lovely. Let's fit the precision tooling. Now I can roll the head over and lift it over to the press, move it about, and the valves are all going to stay where they're supposed to be. Everything's all bagged up in order, so I'm going to start at A1 probably and just work my way along doing a exhaust inlet. Don't forget, by the way, if you're doing this, that halfway it switches. So it's exhaust, inlet, exhaust, inlet, exhaust, inlet, inlet, exhaust. You can't mess them up because the collets, the keepers won't fit on, but it's just worth bearing in mind. I've got the press all set up and ready to do A1. Got all the bits I need out of the bag. I'll leave the tappet and the adjustment shim in the bags. I won't need them until I fit the camshaft. So first up is the little cup that the springs sit on, then the springs, we then need to fit the, I'm calling it a retainer. I did mean to look up the proper name for it and I forgot, but I don't care. It's the thing that holds the keepers in. I then got my custom made or custom alterated tool here, and I'm just going to compress that all down. If you haven't seen this tool before, then that's in a previous video. I've just basically cut one side out. It gives me access to actually get in and put the fiddly little keepers in. So I'm just going to compress that all the way down, expose the ribs where the keepers sit, and then I am going to put a little bit of assembly. I can't do this with gloves on, not a chance. I'm going to put a little bit of assembly lube on the keepers. Doesn't help that today I've got it's really sticky and warm here, and I've got very clammy hands. There we go. That's all I wanted to do. So that's now being held on by the assembly lube. So I'm just going to spin that round, hopefully without knocking it off, and then do the same with the other keeper. There we go. Did that one first time. That's rare. I can now relieve the press, and we have one spring installed. When it goes well, it's really, really simple, but usually it's quite a faff. I'm going to run along and do all of them like that and then we just need to whack those gently with a hammer just to make sure that those keepers are seated. So we'll move on to A1 inlet, and because it's an inlet, we have our new inlet valve seals. I have just sprayed a little bit of GT85 on that just to help it slide down the shaft. There we go, that's that installed. I would just like to mention, because someone might be able to help me with this. So I did buy a valve collet installation type tool. I don't know what it's for. I mean, I believe the idea is that you pop the collets in, then hold them together like that, pop it in and install them. But there's not enough room once it's inside the holder down tool type thing that's on all valve compressors to, just maybe. No, it's not. I haven't got enough room there. That's fully, I'm not actually holding that. It's trapped by the standard size tool. Now I've dropped the collets down inside there, which is a pain in the ass to get them out. So I don't know if someone can, am I just being stupid and using this wrong? I don't know. I have just found out, however, that this bit that comes in that kit, maybe this is useful actually. So it's just a gentle magnet on one end. There's a kind of tooly thing on the other end, but that's just about the right amount of magnetism. Just put a bit of lube on there to hold it on the stick. But once you get this on here, you can actually, if you go in at the right angle, there we go, just nip it off. So that's much better than me trying to do it with my fingers. I'll just spin that one round and then do that again. Just hold that there, pop that on there, and just go to the side, and it just lets go. So that's a lot easier. I wish I'd realised I had that tool about 3 days ago. So yeah, if you're doing this job and you can find this tool either on its own, or it wasn't expensive, that kit anyway, that's definitely worth having. And the last job before we move on is just to run along and give all the springs a bit of a whack. I believe that helps the keepers just kind of settle into where they're supposed to be. I don't know. I've been told you're supposed to do this. I need to hit it hard enough just to shake everything up so it settles, but not so hard, obviously, that I've popped the valve out again. Time to do a bit of a leak test. I've just got some brake cleaner here. I'm going to check the inlets first, and I'm just going to pour a generous amount of brake cleaner in each port. So I don't know if you can see down there, but there's the top of the valve submerged. We've got no leakage so far, so I'm calling that a success. I'm pretty sure brake cleaner would find its way around pretty much immediately. But all 6 inlets are holding. There's a little bit of WD-40 and lube on here, which is why it's shiny. I should have cleaned them off really, but they're not leaking brake cleaner at all. So I'm going to call that a success, empty them out, and do the exhaust ports. Found a couple of bits of scrap wood. So again, same procedure. I think they're all full. Yep. Oop, missed one there. Right. And again, the same. Well, they're at a bit of an angle, but I don't think it'll make any difference. If they were leaking, I'd expect to see brake cleaner leaking out of here on one or more of the, oh, I'm pointing at the inlet there. Should be looking at the outlets here, the exhaust. And so far, just smelling that, that's WD-40, that shiny bit there. Same again. Yep, no brake cleaner. That's been sitting there for a good half an hour, and I've got other things to do. So I'm going to call that a success. Tip out this. Whoa. Okay, everything's just going to fall off. And nearly knocked the jug over as well. Next job is to refit the cam housing. But you'll have to join me in the next video to see all of that and the completed heads. We are about halfway through the whole project of doing the heads now. I have mocked them up with the manifolds on and a few other bits and bobs. So not only are you seeing, hopefully, my attempts to make sure that this engine works really well when I rebuild it. Obviously, that's massively important, but also it's important to me how this engine looks. So hopefully when you see these heads revealed in the next video, you'll start to get an idea of the kind of aesthetic that I'm going for with the engine. It's certainly starting to take shape. I'm getting quite excited. Also terrified that it's just going to leak oil and destroy itself as soon as I start it up. But it'll look pretty before it does that. See you in the next video. Thanks for watching.